Welcome YouTube to my little tiny space on YouTube. My name is Kevin. Today we are going to be doing an unboxing of the Age of Scorpius. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I did find this book on eBay and I bought it. All right, I'll show you because you're probably curious. I did overpay for it by a lot. $215.11 to be exact. As we can also see, I also bought another controversial book, Shy Girl. I probably overpaid for that as well, but I was kind of curious. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. So that's why I bought these books at such an exorbitant amount of money. Now, as we're all familiar with, there has been a ton of videos, people talking about look at this guy, 9 hours. I'm not sure what it says about me that I watched almost 7 hours, and I'm not done. I'll listen to the rest of it when I go to work Tuesday. Wednesday, excuse me. But as we can see, a lot of people be talking about this book. Well, now we're going to look at it physically. The limited edition hardback Kickstarter, and it is a Kickstarter because here we are. Here's the proof. The old TikTok announcement from back in the day, apparently. Now, with that being said, let's get to the meat of why we are here. The Age of Scorpius. All right, so we're all on the same page. I have actually re-recorded this video quite a few times, so I have repackaged it. I even thought about recording myself repackaging it, but no need to do that. The point is I've been through this book many times already from just recording this video. And there are things that kind of grind my gears, to use is that a Family Guy or a Homer Simpson thing? It's ultimately irrelevant. The Age of Scorpius. I like the cover. The thing that I would say is I feel that the magical diagrams, there's too much going on. Maybe remove the one at the top. Maybe lessen the white shadow around the text a little bit, and to make it more aesthetically pleasing. I'm not a fan of the spine because I feel that it doesn't aesthetically match the front or the rear cover. We can open it, and we do have this little sections right here. This is cool, but I also say that it's also disappointing because it's repeated in the back. Again, this was a Kickstarter, mind you, so, put different art in the front and the back of your book. I mean, you're having people give you money. And, yeah, it's a Kickstarter edition, but at the end of the day, most Kickstarter editions could be the equivalent of a collector's edition. So, give people what they're paying for. Jumping back, in fact, to explain what I would have specifically done is I would have taken the front cover, removed all of the text and the decorations, the title, everything, and that's what would have been right here. I also take issue with the chapter table of contents. I don't know who decided that this was the best way to do it. It isn't. I don't like it. This really irritates me. Just do that, turn the page, and there's chapter 23. And yes, I take issues with this map as well. Like I said, I've re-recorded this video 50 billion times. You don't even want to know how many times I stuffed this book back in those envelopes and the packaging because I was like, well, now I got to do this over because I messed up. I don't like this map. This is because this is clearly supposed to be a colored map that was turned black and white and put in a book, so aesthetically it does not fit. Not to mention, again, this is a freaking Kickstarter book. Get off your lazy ass and do the color. And no. I don't want any excuses because let's jump to a different controversial book. This wannabe Wheel of Time clone. This is not a collector's edition. This is not a Kickstarter. This was the standard edition of the hardback, and it came with a colored map. Now, if this map was black and white, it probably would look a little bit better than that one, just from a design perspective. But I would still say probably not. Make it color if it was clearly designed to be a color map. Else, because we're talking Kickstarter, use some of that money that you supposedly got, although this is kind of late after the fact, to either put the colored map in or pay someone to design an actual map that is more aesthetically pleasing and complements a book itself. Okay? The next criticism that we're going to run into is this. This is cool. I like this. If this was a poster, I'd hang it on my wall, even if it was black and white. But you want to know the problem? It's the only one in this entire Kickstarter book. Here, I have another example for you. Yes, this is not even a collector's edition. It's not even labeled as an illustrated edition. It's not even a Kickstarter edition. You see all these? Those are all images. You want to tell me how your Kickstarter book couldn't do the same thing? And I'm not expecting this. But just one for a Kickstarter book? That is sad. Because, we to show you how sad this is, let's do it. Look at that. There's one. We'll go to the next one. There's another one. And yes, sweetness, awesomeness. Oh yeah. What's the point? Point is there's quite the amount of problems just from a design perspective from this book, in my opinion, especially since this was supposed to be a Kickstarter. Now, for example, here's a map. I actually drew this on paper with a pencil, and then I scanned it with my printer years ago. Was in my 20s when I did this. I'm like 42 right now. And then I slapped it in Photoshop, and I did the atrocity that we're looking at. I then paid someone to turn it into this. If I was going to put this in a book for the story that this was originally planned for, what we're seeing is what would be in the book. If I was self-publishing, or if traditionally published and the traditional publisher said no, then I'm sure they probably would have a better aesthetic pleasing map made to put in the book. If I was self-publishing, I'd pay somebody to create a more aesthetically pleasing version of this map that would fit the format of a book. Okay, I'm pretty confident I don't have to show you what I'm talking about. We've all seen maps in books that are awesome, that are cool, even black and white ones. That's the ones I'm talking about, okay? This isn't the only controversial book I've picked up. As we saw in the beginning, how much I paid. I also picked up Shadiversity's Shadow of the Conqueror. And, the thing that these two authors have in common is, and this ain't even my opinion, this is a fact because there's evidence on the internet from both of these individuals. They cannot take criticism. And the worst part is that Milo Winter believes that their shit don't stink. And everybody was just too negative towards what they created. And they're destroying what you love. Welcome to the internet and welcome to reality. Same thing. The only difference is that this author decided to make a response video to some of the negative reviews, which doesn't really do anyone justice. It doesn't prove your point. In fact, it does the opposite of that, because then people just start pointing out how you ignored all of the negative reviews that they could clearly see on screen, but you ignored. Anyway, the greater point is that no author is fallible, okay? Hopefully that's the correct term. This is a bunch of short stories and novel ideas that I printed out with the idea to look at what I've written, maybe rewrite or introduce them somehow in a different idea. We are going to focus on one particular one specifically. You see this right here, this thing right there, a BFA in creative writing for entertainment. That does not make me an authority in writing in any way, shape, or form. Anyone who has a degree and makes such a claim, I'm going to drop the F-bomb. They're a fucking idiot, okay? Now, with that being said, this was a requirement. Now, I was actually worried because we had 2 weeks to write a short story, and this is probably closer to flash fiction than an actual short story. And I knew that I was not very good at self-editing. I can catch things, and then I will catch things later. Not in one go. It takes me a while. The instructor, I think mostly to please me, said, I'm going to edit them. Now, I never heard back from him, and my ignorant 20-year-old self thought that, oh, maybe there was nothing wrong. And then it was up on the internet for everyone, their mother, and the kitchen sinks to see for an entire year before I decided to go and actually download it and read it. And I was like, this thing is atrocious. Case in point. Rosa shouted K as his footsteps let out a terrifying echo that surprised even him across the thinly laid green carpet. That sentence alone is horrendous. Because we're talking about a carpet, I'm also referring to a sound. But as we all know, the sound would logically not be coming from the carpet. It would be coming from the wood creaking under the carpet. But I didn't make that distinction in the sentence. Maybe someone in their mind would have been like, oh, maybe he means this. But if you read it at face value, it's almost as if I'm saying the sound is coming from that thinly laid green carpet, which doesn't make any sense. And besides the fact that it's been years since I've even looked at this, if I had to remember, I probably thought this was pretty good I thought this was pretty good when I read it. You know, wrote it and read it and turned it in like, all right, it's pretty good, not too bad. There's a reason why people say, leave it alone, take a break, go do something else and come back and read it later. Because you're more than likely going to be like, holy shit, it is something, but it's not good. So I would say the one thing that we can learn from both Shad and Milo is that they really never seem to have... it almost feels as if they never really questioned themselves as artists. Because I don't know about you. If you know an artist, I know other artists. And I'm not just talking like writers. I'm talking painters, sculptors, stuff like that. They all criticize themselves. They think that their work is horrible. It's not very good. And even I, did this in middle grade where I would write something, and then I would read it and I would think it's not good. So I would erase it because I had notebooks and number 2 pencils. And I would go through this never ending cycle of write, read, erase. And, it evolved when I got a computer to delete, but it was still always there. And I would say the one benefit for me from my degree right here is that it allowed complete strangers to look at my stuff and kind of tell me, your writing isn't as bad as you think it is. Like, yeah, there's some, spelling and grammatical errors and some issues with past and present tense. My English teacher said I could never figure out a comma and how to use it correctly. So she would tell me I would use a comma where a semicolon would be, and then I would use a semicolon where a comma should go. The greater point is that no writer is infallible, and what they create isn't going to be perfect. And this isn't even something like art is subjective, all right? Because both Shad and Milo come off as if their shit don't stink. And to look at Milo, he has this something to do with like 10,000 words, and somehow that is experience. I started when I was in middle grade. This is like 96, 97. I'm 42 years old. It's 2026 now. I've definitely written more than 10,000 words, but that doesn't somehow mean that what I write doesn't stink or doesn't have the potential to stink. We look at somebody like Brandon Sanderson, who wrote 15 novels, his own words, and even he says they were all bad. We could look at a different author, Jenna Moresi. Hopefully I pronounced her name correctly. She did the Savior's Champion series. That has been highly criticized as well because she gives writing advice, but you read some of the reviews, it's as if, well, she gives all this writing advice, but she can't follow it when she writes her own books. The one thing that she's never done is responded to the negative criticism. She just continues to do what she should be doing, which is just write. Because the more you write, the better you will ultimately become. And I would say, yes, you need more than 3 or 4 books, before you probably would see that. I mean, after all, Brandon Sanderson, 15, and he said they were all bad. And I think that's the biggest problem when it comes to Shad and Milo, is it's almost as if they never had this artistic self-doubt that kind of self-checked them to reality, you know? That maybe what I'm doing isn't that bad. Because like I said, college, and people were like, well, bro, you're not that bad, all right? This isn't horrendous. This is doable. This is acceptable. With a little fine-tuning, it could be pretty good. I mean, even Daniel Green, his first book, which, what was that? A Breach of Peace? I can't remember it. I haven't read it yet, but even he talks about how that isn't a very good book. He even says there's mistakes in the, what is that? The Neon Ghost book? I can't remember it. His other one that was published in a different way. I don't think it was Kickstarter, but even he says that isn't as fine-tuned as it should be. There's a difference between an artist that can look at what they've written and see the mistakes that they made. And then there's people, Milo, and Shad, who don't see anything wrong. And their shit don't stink. And they're going to tell you why it doesn't stink.